Hello children, today I am going to start a new story, Golu Grows a Nose. This story you can find in your An Alien Hand supplementary reader book, and it is written by Rudyard Kipling, the great author. So let's start. Golu Grows a Nose. Rudyard Kipling, in full name Joseph Rudyard Kipling, born December 30, 1865, Bombay, now Mumbai, India. Died on 18th January 1936, London, England. English short story writer, poet, and novelist, chiefly remembered for his celebration of British imperialism, his tales and poems of British soldiers in India, and his tales for children. He received the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1907. Kipling's father, John Lockwood Kipling, was an artist and a scholar who had considerable influence on his son's work, became curator of the Lahore Museum, and is described presiding over this wonder house in the first chapter of King. Rudyard's most famous novel, his mother, was Alice MacDonald, two of whose sisters married the highly successful 19th century painter Sir Edward Burne-Jones and Sir Edward Poynter, while a third married Alfred Baldwin and became the mother of the Stanley Baldwin, later Prime Minister. These connections were of lifelong importance to Kipling. Much of his childhood was unhappy. Kipling was taken to England by his parents at the age of 6 and was left for 5 years at a foster home at Southsea, the horrors of which he described in the story Baba Black Sheep in 1888. He then went to the United Services College at Westward, North Devon, a new, inexpensive, and inferior boarding school. It haunted Kipling for the rest of his life, but always as the glorious plays celebrated of Stanley and Company 1899 and related story An Unruly Paradise, in which the highest goals of English education are met amid a tumult of teasing, bullying, and beating. The Stalky saga is one of the Kipling's great imaginative achievement. Readers, repelled by a strain of the brutality, even of the cruelty, in his writing should remember the sensitive and short-sighted boy who was brought to terms with the ethos of this deplorable establishment through the demands of self-preservation. Kipling returned to India in 1882 and worked for 7 years as a journalist. His parent, although not officially important, belonged to the highest Anglo-Indian society, and Rudyard thus has opportunity for exploring the whole range of that life. All the while he had remained keenly observant of thorning spectacle of native India, which had engaged his interest and affection from earliest childhood. He was quickly filling the journals he worked for with prose sketches and light verse. He published the verse collection Department Deities in 1886, the short story collection Plain Tales from the Hills in 1888, and between 1887 and 1889 he brought out 6 paper-covered volumes of short stories. Among the later were Soldiers 3, The Phantom Rickshaw, containing the story The Man Who Would Be King, and Wee Winkie, containing Baba Black Sheep. When Kipling returned to England in 1889, his reputation had preceded him, and within a year he has acclaimed as one of the most brilliant prose writers of his time. His fame was redoubled upon the publication in 1892 of the verse collection Barrack Room Ballads, which contained such popular poems as Mandalay, Gunga Din, and Danny Deever. Not since the English poet Lord Byron had such a reputation been achieved so rapidly. When the poet laureate Alfred Lord Tennyson died in 1892, it may be said that Kipling took his place in popular estimation. In 1892, Kipling married Caroline Balestier, the sister of the Walcott Balestier, an American publisher and writer with whom he had collaborated in Naulakha 1892, a facile and unsuccessful romance. That year, the young couple moved to the United States and settled on Mrs. Kipling's property in Vermont. But their manners and attitude were considered objectionable by their neighbors. Unable or unwilling to adjust to life in America, the Kipling returned to England in 1896. Even after, Kipling remained very aware that Americans were foreigners, and he extended to them as to the French. No more than a semi-exemption for his propositions, and only lesser breeds are born beyond the English Channel. In 1902, Kipling bought a house at the Burwash, Sussex, which remained his home until his death. In 1907, he received the Nobel Prize for Literature, the first Englishman to be so honored. In South Africa, where he spent much time, he has given a house by Cecil Rhodes, the diamond magnate and the South African statesman. This association fostered Kipling's imperialist persuasions, which were to grow stronger with the years. These convictions are not to be dismissed in a word. They were bound up with a genuine sense of civilizing mission that required every Englishman, or more broadly, every white man, to bring European culture to those he considered the heathen natives of the uncivilized world. Kipling's ideas were not in accord with much that was liberal in the thought of the age. And as he became older, he has an increasingly isolated figure. When he died 2 days before King George V, he must have seemed to many a far less representative Englishman than his sovereign. Golu grows a nose. This story is written by Rudyard Kipling. Long, long ago, the elephant had no trunk. There was a baby elephant called Golu. He too had no trunk. He had only a bulgy nose as small as the small boot. Golu was full of questions. He asked the ostrich, "Why don't you ever fly like other birds?" He asked his very big uncle, the hippopotamus, "Why are your eyes always so red?" Golu's uncles did not answer his question. They thought the question was too difficult. One day, Golu met a myna. He asked it, "What does a crocodile have for dinner?" The myna advised Golu to go the Limpu river. Golu went home. After the meals, Golu said to his family, "Goodbye. I am going to great grassy Limpopo river. I will find out what the crocodile has for dinner." Thus Golu started for Limpopo river to find out what the crocodile has for dinner. On this way, Golu met a phantom. He asked him also the same question. The python also did not give any reply. However, he quietly followed Golu. When he reached the river, he saw a big log of wood. Actually, it was a crocodile. When it winkled at Golu, he asked, "Have you ever seen a crocodile?" The crocodile told him that was him. Crocodile shed crocodile tears to show that it was true. Golu was frightened, yet he asked the crocodile what he had for dinner. The crocodile said, "Come here, little one, and I will whisper the answer to you." He said it because he wanted to eat Golu. Golu went near him. The crocodile caught him by the nose. Then he told Golu that today he would be his dinner. Now the python came to Golu's help. He asked Golu to pull hard. Now both the crocodile and Golu tried to pull each other. Then the python coiled himself round Golu's stomach. He also applied his strength with Golu. In the meantime, Golu's nose kept on stretching. In the end, Golu was able to free himself, but his nose had become 5 feet long. Golu sat there for 2 days, waiting for the nose to cool and shrink. The nose cooled but did not shrink. Python said, "The long nose called trunk would be useful. With it, the elephant could keep the flies away. But with it, the elephant could put a large quantity of his food into his mouth. The trunk helps the elephant to throw mud or water on his body when it is hot." Golu thanked the python and went back home. Golu Grows a Nose is a humorous story by Rudyard Kipling, the same author of the Jungle Book. The story begins in the past. In past, elephants' noses were not like as of now. Instead of the long trunk, they had only a bulgy nose. In the forest, there was a baby elephant named Golu. He was a very inquisitive elephant. He always wondered for common questions. Their neighbors had no answer for them. What crocodiles take in dinner? Golu was in search of the answer to what crocodile take in dinner. Manna Bird suggested him to visit great grassy Limpopo River. Golu went home, took numerous sugar canes, bananas, and melons, and started his journey to the river. In the midway, Golu asked a python about a crocodile who had no clues. Golu helped him to coiling on the tree. Next day, he reached the great grassy Limpopo River. There he saw a log of wood. The wood was actually a crocodile who winked at Golu. Golu fight with crocodile. Golu asked if he had seen a crocodile. The crocodile was wanting to bring Golu close to him. He said, I am a crocodile. Now Golu asked his query. The crocodile in return replied, come here. I will whisper in the ear. Golu initially refused, but on insist and crocodile tears, Golu agreed. Once Golu came closer, the crocodile replied in his ear, a baby elephant will be my dinner today. With this, the crocodile caught Golu by the nose. Golu was hurt. He asked the crocodile to leave him. The tussle between Golu and the crocodile. And here you can see the tussle between the Golu and the crocodile. The crocodile was not going to leave Golu, kept dragging Golu to the river. Golu pushed his feet in the sand and started pulling his nose. The python was following Golu since they met. He encircled around the stomach of Golu and kept pulling together. With each pull, Golu's nose was becoming longer. Finally, Golu was able to escape from the grip of the crocodile, but it hurt his nose. Golu kept his nose in water for 2 days, and in anticipation that the nose will shrink. After 2 days, nose was not hurting, but it did not shrink. Now here we can see Golu came to know long trunk is good. Golu was sad with long nose and wrapped it in a long banana leaf. A fly came and stunk Golu. Golu hit the fly with the long trunk. Next time, Golu had to dust off the plucked twigs. Long trunk helped Golu in getting rid of dust from the twig. It was hot sun there. Golu used his trunk to pick the mud and slapped it on the head. Golu grows a nose. There was a time when the elephant had no trunk. Golu, a baby elephant with a bulgy nose, is full of questions. He goes to the Limpopo River to find out more about the crocodile eating habits. Now here I am going to start reading of the chapter. Long, long ago, the elephant had no trunk. He had only a bulgy nose, as big as a boot. He could wiggle it from side to side, but couldn't pick up things with it. There was a baby elephant called Golu. He too had no trunk, but only a bulgy nose, as small as a small boot. Golu was full of questions. He asked his tall aunt, the ostrich, why don't you ever fly like other birds? Then he asked his tall uncle, the giraffe, why makes your skin so spotty? He asked his huge uncle, the hippopotamus, why are your eyes always so red? He asked his hairy uncle, the baboon, why do melons taste like melons? The ostrich, the giraffe, the hippopotamus, and the baboon had no answers to Golu's questions. Golu is a naughty baby, they said. He asks such difficult questions. The story Golu Grows a Nose is a very interesting jungle story where we learn how, according to the writer, elephants grew their long trunk or nose. In this story, we find various wild animals as characters in this story. Rudyard Kipling is a master in jungle stories, as you all know that must have seen and read the famous Jungle Book where we find wild animals interesting with the human child named Mowgli. As far as this story is concerned, it is also very interesting and totally fictional and also defying the principles of science. The story revolves around a baby elephant named Golu who had a bulgy nose and no trunk at all. Golu represents the entire elephant species who had no trunk but only a bulgy nose, according to Kipling. Later on, how in order to discover himself and due to his investigations, confronts a crocodiles and finally draws out his trunk, a trunk for the entire species. Now I am going to explain these paragraphs. The writer opens the story about elephants. Before Golu informs us that earlier elephant did not have a long trunk. All was there a bulgy nose and nothing else. It was like a big boot which used to move from side to side when he moved. It was of no use if could not even pick anything with its nose. Now here you can see in this picture. Once in the jungle lived a small baby elephant. Once in the jungle lived a small baby elephant known as Golu. He had no trunk but only a bulgy nose. The shape of the nose looked like a large boot and would sway from one side to another as he moved. Golu was very inquisitive. Just like all the children, and had a ton of question for all the elders animals all around him. He was full of different kind of questions for each and every other animal. As soon as he would meet them, he would try to get answers for his question. All his questions were very true and genuine. He asked questions about things which seems peculiar to him, and most of the occasions none of them had answer to the questions. One day he met the ostrich and asked a question which was very genuine. Ostrich had feathers just like any other bird, and Golu was forced to ask the question to the ostrich, whom he called aunt. Why don't ostrich fly just like other birds? Because they too have feathers, so they should. Golu thought. So he asked the question to his aunt ostrich. To this question, ostrich has no answer at all. Now let's move to see the next paragraph. Later on, he met a giraffe and seeing all the spots on the tall animal, he asked his uncle giraffe, "Why there are so many spots on your skin, uncle?" Golu was a keen observer, and his questions were result of such observation, which he had about his uncle and aunt animals. Giraffe also had no answer to his question. After some time, he met his uncle Hippopotamus, who was very large in shape and size. And Golu asked, "Why are your eyes always red in color?" The hippo was surprised to hear the question, but did not have a reasonable answer to Golu's question. So Golu moved on and met a baboon, or rather his baboon uncle. Baboon are hairy monkey species, and the fruit melon are one of their favorite. So he asked the baboon, "Why do melon taste like melons and not like any other fruit?" The uncle baboon was answered less yet again. Now here you can see in the second paragraph, first he met Uncle Giraffe, first he met Aunt Ostrich, and then Uncle Giraffe, and then Hippopotamus, and at the last in this paragraph he met Baboon. All the animals who knew Golu and some time or other had confronted Golu and had been answerless to his questions were troubled and expressed that Golu was a naughty child who asked so many questions to which none of us have any clue. Let's move to next paragraph. One day, Golu met the Maina, bird sitting in the middle of a bush, and he asked her, "What does the crocodile have for dinner?" The Maina said, "Go to the banks of the great grassy Limpopo River and find out." Here you can see the Maina's cleverness, or you can see she wanted to get rid of these type of the question. So she suggested that go to the banks of the grassy Limpopo River and find out. When the Golu asked the question, "What does the crocodile have for dinner?" As you all know, crocodiles are lives in the sea. And here the Maina very cleverly said, "Go to the banks of the great grassy Limpopo River and find out." Golu went home. He took 100 sugar canes, 50 dozen bananas, and 25 melons. Then he said to his family, "Goodbye. I am going to the great grassy Limpopo River. I'll find out what the crocodile has for dinner." He had never seen a crocodile and didn't know what one looked like. Now, here you can see the curiosity of Golu, and he always wanted to ask question and always wanted answer of different kind of from different kind of animals about their self. So this is story we will continue tomorrow. And so that's all for today. Take care and bye bye.